"Madison, the $1 million contract needs your signature. Now." The voice exploded through her Bluetooth earpiece, sharp as glass. Madison Hale stood motionless in the pouring rain, her designer heels sinking into the edge of a grimy Brooklyn curb. A smear of blood had already soaked into the cuff of her cream-colored blazer. The man lying on the sidewalk wasn't moving, his breath shallow and erratic. Blood trickled from a gash near his temple, mixing with the puddles below. She had been en route to Hale Tech's flagship tower, 10 minutes away. 10 minutes from sealing the largest deal in her company's history. 10 minutes from validation, from a press release that would splash her name across every major business outlet. And now, she was kneeling on wet concrete, one hand trembling as she dialed 911, the other cradling the head of a stranger. "You have 5 minutes," the assistant snapped again through her ear. "They're threatening to walk. This will crush your stock value. Madison, I beg you, just get in the damn car." Her lips parted, but no words came out. She looked at the man again, mid-30s maybe, strong build, dressed in a navy windbreaker and sneakers worn to the threads. No wallet, no phone. No witnesses but a few indifferent passers-by dodging the rain with umbrellas, throwing her the occasional puzzled glance. A middle-aged woman muttered as she passed, "Don't get involved, honey. You know how this neighborhood island—" "Huh." Madison ignored her. The man moaned softly, his eyes fluttering. She leaned down, her voice low but firm. "Sir, can you hear me? Help is coming." But was it? Her fingers shook as she pressed her phone tighter to her ear. "I need an ambulance at the corner of Classen and Monroe. A man is unconscious. Head injury. Yes, he's breathing, but it's shallow." The dispatcher's voice was calm but robotic. "We'll dispatch immediately. Stay with him. Do not attempt to move him." "Tulate." Madison was already sliding her blazer off, folding it gently under his head to keep it elevated. The silk lining was ruined, but she didn't care. Her knees were soaked through her slacks. Somewhere deep inside her designer handbag, her pen still waited ready to sign the contract that might never come. Another call buzzed in. She let it go, then another, and another. A town car idled nearby, her driver nervously stepping out under an umbrella. "Miss Hale, they won't wait much longer." She didn't respond. Her eyes remained locked on the man's face. Something about him pulled at her, no badge, no ID, but his jawline was unmistakably strong and even unconscious. There was something anchored about him. Not a vagrant, not a junkie. Someone misplaced, disoriented. Her driver tried again. "You're risking everything." Madison finally looked up at him. "And what if this is everything?" He paused, blinking. She turned back to the stranger. His breathing was uneven, lips beginning to turn blue. Sirens were still nowhere in earshot. The storm seemed to get heavier, the air denser with the weight of decisions. Through the headset, a final plea came. "Madison, this will follow you. Your board will never forgive." She tore the earpiece off, tossing it onto the wet pavement where it sparked weakly before dying. Then came the sirens. Finally, as EMTs jumped from the ambulance, one of them, a woman in her 40s, knelt beside Madison and looked at her with a mix of urgency and curiosity. "You're the one who called?" "Yes." "You did the right thing," the EMT said, starting her assessment. "You may have saved his life." Madison said nothing. Her throat tightened, not from fear, but from the sheer finality of the moment. A choice had been made, and she would have to live with it. As the gurney rolled toward the back of the ambulance, the man stirred for a brief second, locking eyes with her. Just a flicker. But in that flicker was something familiar recognition, almost gratitude, and then he was gone. The rain began to lighten, as if exhausted from its own fury. Madison stood in silence, soaked through, mascara running faintly down her cheeks. The town car was still waiting, engine humming, warm and dry inside. She didn't move toward it. Instead, she pulled out a small card from her wallet, her Hale Tech business card, black and gold scrawled something on the back, and handed it to the EMT. "If he wakes up," she said quietly, "give him this." The EMT took it, nodding. Madison turned away, heels clicking as she walked toward the opposite end of the street, away from the car, away from the contract, away from everything she'd spent the last 10 years building. And yet, she didn't feel lost. Not yet. In the back of her mind, a question echoed not from the boardroom, not from Wall Street, but from a simpler time. Would her father have stopped? She already knew the answer. 4 hours earlier, the sun had barely risen over Manhattan's jagged skyline when Madison Hale slipped into her silver Mercedes, the city still clinging to its dawn silence. She had dressed precisely for the day. Tailored cream slacks, a white silk blouse, and the navy blazer with the embroidered Hale-Tech crest on the inside, lining a subtle homage to her father, who had always believed that legacy mattered more than style. Her mother's voice crackled over the Bluetooth as she pulled out of the garage, light and uncertain, like a signal fighting static. "Maddie, are you driving already?" Madison smiled, even though her chest tightened. "Yes, Mom. Just heading in early. Big day today." There was a pause, then her mother's voice, soft and wandering, said, "Don't forget who you are." Your father never did. It was a phrase she had repeated often these days, more out of fading memory than intention. But somehow, this morning, it felt rooted, heavy, a warning cloaked as affection. Madison didn't reply immediately. Instead, she let her eyes linger on the traffic reports flashing across the navigation screen: accidents, construction, bottlenecks, all along the FDR. She frowned, made a quiet decision, and veered off her normal route. Rather than head directly to Midtown, she took a detour east, cutting through the old neighborhoods in Brooklyn, where her family had lived when Hale-Tech was still an idea scribbled in her father's notepad and not a billion-dollar entity. The further she drove, the more the city changed. Glossy storefronts gave way to graffiti-tagged brick walls, the sidewalks cracked, mailboxes dented, children waiting for buses in hand-me-downs and oversized backpacks. It wasn't nostalgia that gripped her, it was gravity. This place still pulled at her. The scent of bakery bread, a familiar corner barber shop, the rusted fence outside PS 112, all were still standing, ghosts that hadn't aged. She slowed at a crosswalk, watching a mother pull her child along, late for school. A man shouted across the street to a friend, their voices casual, weathered, real. Not like the scripted pleasantries exchanged in Hale-Tech's glass offices. Her phone rang again. Bennett, her assistant. "You're not on the GPS route," he said immediately. "There's an ETA discrepancy on your car tracker." "I took a shortcut through the old neighborhood," she replied, eyes on the road. "Madison, this is not the day for reminiscing. The board is already in the tower. Hitoshi's rep flew in from Tokyo for this. We don't get second chances." "I know," she said, her tone even. "I'll be there." She didn't mention the weight on her chest, or her mother's words, or the dull ache that had sat in her heart since her father's death, never fully grieving, because she had no time to stop, no time to feel. A red light halted her on Monroe Avenue, not far from the community center her father used to volunteer at. She glanced over and saw a food truck unloading crates of produce. The volunteer wore a faded Hale-Tech hoodie from over a decade ago, back when the company gave away sweatshirts during Thanksgiving drives. She almost rolled the window down to say something, but then the light changed. As she pressed the accelerator, something darted across her vision. A man mid-30s stumbling from an alley. She hit the brakes instinctively, heart leaping. He staggered, one hand clutching his head, the other reaching as if for balance, then collapsed forward onto the sidewalk. That moment frozen in her mind was the axis upon which her day would turn. She had pulled over immediately, leapt out, ignoring the rain beginning to patter, the car alarm chirping behind her, and then, everything from Chapter 1 happened. The man's blood, her blazer, the earpiece, the torn choice. Now, 4 hours later, she sat in the waiting area of the ER at Brooklyn General, her clothes damp, her face bare of makeup, her phone silent. The contract was gone. The news hadn't broken yet, but she knew what tomorrow's headlines would say: CEO derails deal to save unknown man. She'd become a punchline in boardrooms, a cautionary tale in finance columns. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched the vending machine coffee. She hadn't called her mother back. She hadn't spoken to Bennett. She had simply followed the ambulance here, walked in quietly, and told the nurse her name when asked. No one had recognized her. That felt like both a blessing and a wound. From inside the double doors, a nurse emerged. "Miss Hale?" Madison stood quickly. "Yes?" "He's stable. Concussion. Moderate blood loss. Some confusion. He's conscious, but disoriented. Doesn't remember his name. No ID. Says he was running, Might be trauma, related amnesia. Can I see him? Not yet, but you can leave something if you want. Madison reached into her handbag, pulling out one of her personal cards. The black and gold embossed design felt out of place here. Still, she flipped it over and scribbled on the back. "You're not alone. Someone stayed." She handed it to the nurse. "Please give him this when he's ready." The nurse nodded, giving her a longer look now, perhaps recognizing the name, or maybe just the haunted look in Madison's eyes. Madison turned and walked back outside. The rain had finally stopped. The sun tried to peek through a sky still heavy with gray. She didn't head toward the waiting car. She didn't call the office. She just walked. Past cracked sidewalks and broken benches. Past the ghosts of who she used to be. She could still hear her mother's voice in her head. "Don't forget who you are." She hadn't. And for the first time in a long time, she wondered if losing a contract might just mean reclaiming something far more valuable. The next morning, Madison Hale stood motionless in front of the Hale Tech Tower, its mirrored surface casting back a version of herself she barely recognized. Soaked blazer now replaced with a muted charcoal jacket, her usual heels swapped for practical flats. The media hadn't caught the story yet, but the tension had already spread like oil through the marble-floored corridors of her company. Her phone buzzed continuously, board members, investors, PR teams, but she silenced them all. Her assistant, Bennett, waited inside, pacing like a man preparing for a funeral. The elevator chimed. She entered alone, watching the numbers climb with mechanical certainty as her mind replayed the hospital, the gash on the stranger's head, his flicker of recognition, the business card tucked into the nurse's hand. As the doors slid open on the top floor, Bennett rushed toward her, tablet in hand, jaw clenched. "Madison," he hissed under his breath. "They're waiting. They're livid. The Tokyo rep flew back overnight. We've lost the exclusivity clause. Legal's in damage control." Madison didn't flinch. "Is the board in the conference room?" "Yes, all of them." "Then let's go." The doors parted to a boardroom filled with cold faces, gray suits, narrowed eyes, coffee cups untouched. At the head of the table sat Gregory Finch, the interim chairman, a man whose legacy was carved more from mergers than morals. He gestured toward the open seat with calculated restraint. "Miss Hale, we'd like to begin by hearing your explanation, assuming there is one." Madison sat down, folded her hands on the table, and spoke evenly. "Yesterday morning, en route to this meeting, I witnessed a man collapse on the street. He was injured, unconscious. I made a decision to stay and help." Murmurs broke across the room. Gregory leaned forward. "You chose to prioritize a street incident over a multi-million-dollar partnership, one that we spent 3 months cultivating, one that hinged entirely on your signature." "Yes," Madison replied. "I chose to be human." Silence, then scoffs. One board member chuckled under his breath, another shook her head in disbelief. But Gregory's eyes sharpened. "You jeopardized this company's future based on a split-second emotional reaction. Tell me, Madison, was this stranger a client? A contact? A potential investor? Number? Then what, exactly, qualified him to outweigh the interests of 2,000 employees and our shareholders?" She stared at him, pulse steady. "Because I couldn't walk away from someone in need. And if that disqualifies me from leading this company, then maybe the problem isn't with me." There it was, the moment she knew would come, the veiled threat, the unraveling of confidence. She didn't wait for their verdict. She stood, gathered her things, and left the room before the whispers could metastasize. In the hallway, Bennett caught up to her. "They'll vote by end of week. You've made enemies." "They were never allies," she said, pressing the elevator button. "I'll be in my office. Let legal handle the press." Back downstairs, the city had already begun to churn horns, chatter, motion without meaning. But 1 block away, in the quiet of the ER at Brooklyn General, a man stirred from his hospital bed, his head bandaged, the fluorescent light above him flickering softly. His name, if he remembered it, wasn't coming back. But there was something else, a card, black and gold, resting on the bedside tray. He reached for it slowly, eyes scanning the elegant script on the front. Madison Hale, CEO, Hale Tech Industries. On the back, a handwritten note, "You're not alone. Someone stayed." He blinked, the letters swimming in his vision. Something inside him clenched a memory, maybe, or the edge of one. He didn't know who he was, but he knew what that card meant. Someone had chosen him over everything, and that had to matter. At the nurse's station, an orderly approached with a clipboard. "Hey, the John Doe in 213. He's awake. Any ID yet?" "Nothing. No match on facial rec, no wallet, no prints in the system." The nurse frowned. "Homeless? Maybe. But his shoes are new, watch is real. This guy doesn't belong on the street." Inside the room, the man sat up slowly, breathing steady but shallow. He looked around, taking in the sterile walls, the distant beeping, the card in his hand. Then, in a voice rough from silence, he whispered the first words he'd spoken since waking. "Madison Hale." The nurse peeked through the door, hearing him. "You remember her?" He shook his head. "Number, but I think she remembers me." That same morning, Madison sat in her office overlooking the city, watching storm clouds gather again over the East River. Her inbox was exploding investor concerns, requests for comment, invitations to resign. But she ignored it all. Her attention was focused on one thing: the hospital security footage. She had called in a favor, discreetly, and now, on the screen, she saw the man stumbling from the alley. The precise moment he collapsed. But something stood out, a shadow in the alley behind him, a second figure. Madison leaned in, heart hammering. There was someone else there, someone following him. She hit rewind, paused at just the right frame. It was blurry, grainy, but unmistakable. A man in a dark coat, watching from the shadows. This wasn't random. Her jaw clenched. The man she saved wasn't just a stranger. He was running from something, or someone. And whoever he was, whatever secret he carried it, had just become her problem too. The image wouldn't leave Madison's mind. The grainy shadow in the hospital footage haunted her like an unanswered question, a whisper behind a locked door. She had paused the frame over and over, tried to enhance it, even adjusted the contrast, but the figure remained obscured, lurking, faceless, and unnervingly still. Not a passerby, a watcher, a hunter. That evening, while most of the Hale-Tech executives had already left to lick their wounds or draft statements of dissociation, Madison remained in her office, blinds drawn, lights low, her mind tracing the events backward like threads in a tangled knot. The man John Doe hadn't just collapsed. He had been running, and he hadn't been alone. She pulled up the footage again and noted the timestamp, 7:42 a.m., yesterday. Cross-referencing the city's traffic cam system was a stretch, but her family name still carried weight, and favors still mattered in certain NYPD corners. Within the hour, a contact forwarded her a short clip, a view from the traffic camera 1 block west of the alley. A black SUV sat idling with tinted windows, engine running. It never moved, never flinched, even as the ambulance took John Doe away. She replayed it, heart pacing. Something about the SUV felt off, too still, too poised, like a stakeout. She tapped her desk twice, stood, and grabbed her coat. She didn't call Bennett, didn't alert her driver. Instead, she took the service elevator down and hailed a cab like any ordinary New Yorker. "Brooklyn General," she said. The cabbie glanced at her through the mirror, uncertain. "You sure? That place is—" "I'm sure," she said. The hospital looked different at night, quieter, but no less tired. Madison moved through the lobby without drawing attention, her heels soft on the linoleum. At the nurse's station, a tired man in blue scrubs looked up. "You looking for 213? "Yes. I need to speak with him, privately." The nurse hesitated. "He's awake. Still no memory. But he's been asking for you." Madison blinked. "He remembers?" "Only your name." Said it like it meant something. He pointed down the hall. "He's stable, but he's distant, like he's searching for something just outside his reach." She walked to the door slowly, as though approaching a cliff she hadn't realized she'd been standing on the edge of. The man inside was sitting upright, eyes fixed on the window. No television, no sound, just the faint hum of medical machines and the wheeze of the air vent. She knocked lightly. He turned. His eyes met hers, dark, wary, but calm. "You came back," he said. His voice was clearer than she expected. Not fragile, but measured. "I had to," she said. "You said my name. It was on the card, but you said it like you knew it before then." He hesitated, then shrugged lightly. "Maybe I did." She stepped closer, noting the bruises still dark on his temple. the tension in his jaw. "Do you remember anything else?" "Bits," he said. "A noise, running, a hand grabbing me, then pain, and you." She sat beside him. "There was someone in the alley," she said. "You were being followed." He looked at her sharply. "How do you know?" "I've seen the footage. You didn't fall. You were chased." He swallowed hard, leaned back against the pillow. "I don't know who I am," he murmured, "but I know I wasn't just a man on the street. Whoever did this, they wanted something, or they wanted me gone." Madison nodded slowly. "I believe you." He looked at her, as if trying to read something behind her eyes. "Why did you stop? Why risk so much for a stranger?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her father's old keychain, a small brass compass, dented with time. She placed it gently on the table between them. "Because my father taught me that sometimes you stop, not because it's smart, but because it's right." His eyes flicked to the compass. "Did it cost you?" "$1 million contract," she said without blinking. He exhaled a slow breath. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. I'd do it again." A beat of silence stretched between them. Then he spoke again. "If someone was watching me, they might come back." "They already have," Madison said quietly. "I found a black SUV near the scene. Idling. Didn't move. Could be nothing. But I don't believe in coincidences." He clenched his fists slowly, eyes narrowing. "Then I'm putting you in danger just by being here." "Or," she said, "we're already part of something bigger, and ignoring it won't help either of us." He looked at her, not as a patient now, but as a man trying to measure trust. "So what now?" Madison stood. "Tomorrow, you're getting discharged into private care, quietly. I'll have you moved to a place no one knows, and while you rest, I'll find out who's looking for you." "Why would you do that?" he asked again. "You don't owe me anything." She paused at the door, glanced over her shoulder. "Maybe not, but I owe myself the truth, and so do you." Outside, the night had deepened, the city a blur of light and secrets. Somewhere, in the tangle of data and silence, answers waited. And Madison Hale had just decided she was done being passive. Whatever storm was coming, she would walk directly into it, because now it wasn't just about conscience. It was about danger, about truth, and about a man with no name who was very clearly not who he appeared to be. By sunrise, the man had vanished from Brooklyn General without a trace. No discharge papers, no staff signatures, no wheelchair escort. Just an empty bed and the faint imprint of a body that didn't belong there anymore. Madison's phone buzzed before her alarm did. "He's gone." The message from her NYPD contact read. "No security footage, no sign of forced entry, nothing. As if he had disappeared into vapor." Madison stared at the message, unmoving. She hadn't set the extraction in motion yet. Whoever got to him had beaten her to it. She moved fast. Within the hour, her SUV was speeding down the east side, dark sunglasses shielding eyes that hadn't slept. In the back seat, she tapped into the private network. Her father had once built an off-the-grid cluster of encrypted databases and AI-assisted pattern recognition systems only a few insiders even knew existed. It wasn't company tech, it was legacy tech. Built during Hale Tech's origin years when innovation still meant rebellion. She loaded the hospital data, city footage, DMV feeds, and missing persons reports. Every John Doe in the past 72 hours across 5 boroughs. No match. Then she tried something riskier, running a scan on high-level financial databases linked to Homeland Security clearances. She didn't have legal access, but she had backdoors and names. After several minutes, the system flagged something strange, a redacted record from the Department of Defense. The biometric data wasn't a full match, but it was close, too close to ignore. Code name, Rook. Status, deactivated. Clearance, level 5. Assignment, classified. Madison leaned back, her throat dry. Rook wasn't a homeless man. He was military, possibly special operations. But why was he on the street? And why was he being hunted like prey? She arrived at her midtown apartment, an inconspicuous brick building tucked behind a florist and a dry cleaner, a place her PR team didn't even know she used. Inside, she opened a floor panel and retrieved a phone without a SIM card. She dialed a number only used in emergencies. "I need to speak with Marcus Shaw," she said when the voice answered. "No names, the person said. "We don't use real names on this line. Tell him it's Hale's daughter." A pause. Then, 10 minutes. Same location. She dressed down jeans, hoodie, hair in a loose braid, and took the subway to Harlem. There, in a dim jazz bar that didn't open until nightfall, a man with silver in his beard waited in a corner booth, sipping coffee from a chipped mug. "You look tired," he said without looking up. "You look retired," she shot back, sliding in across from him. "And yet here we are." Marcus Shaw had served with her father. Black Ops intelligence, before Black Ops became sanitized by movies. When he finally looked at her, his eyes were full of a respect that didn't cloud suspicion. "I heard about the contract," he said. "That was a loud sacrifice." "I need information," she said, ignoring the compliment. "A man was attacked. No ID, no memory. I ran his biometric through my father's servers. Got a match to something called Rook." Marcus stopped stirring his coffee. "You ran a Dodd ghost protocol on an unverified individual? He was being hunted. Someone got to him before I could. They wiped the hospital clean." "Rook," Marcus repeated, voice low. "That program was buried. Quiet. Post-9 divided by 11 initiative. Covert agents trained to embed and operate inside hostile tech conglomerates, designed to dismantle threats from within. That name wasn't supposed to survive. Then why is he alive? Maybe he broke protocol. Maybe he became the threat." "No," Madison said. "He's not the threat. He's running from it." Marcus's brow furrowed. "That makes it worse. If he's not the problem, it means someone inside the system island. And if they're cleaning up this aggressively, it's not about exposure. It's about containment." "Help me find him," Madison said. "I already did," Marcus said, sliding a napkin across the table. On it, an address. Staten Island, abandoned shipping yard. Madison stared. "You've been tracking him?" "Number." But he left that. Marcus opened his jacket and handed over the small brass compass, the one Madison had left at the hospital. "He left it at the gate of my apartment. Last night, no note. Just this." Madison felt something jolt in her chest. He remembered. Or at least, he remembered enough to reach out. "He wants me to find him, or warn you off," Marcus said. "Either way, I'm going with you." An hour later, the sun had climbed high, but the shadows under the shipping containers felt colder than night. They moved quietly through the rusted maze of crates and trailers, footsteps muffled against the gravel. Madison led with a flashlight, Marcus covering her from behind. A whistle of wind caught the edge of a tarp, flapping it like a warning. Then movement. A silhouette stepped out from behind a stack of crates. Madison froze. "It's me," the man said. "Don't run." He looked different, less wounded, more alert, like something had clicked into place overnight. "You left," Madison said. "Why?" "They're watching hospitals. Phones. You were already a target by helping me. I couldn't risk staying." "Who's after you?" "I don't know their names, but I remember a room. Questions. Pain. Then escape." "You were part of something called Rook," she said carefully. His face twitched. "That name. Yes. That feels right. But I wasn't supposed to leave. Someone wants you silenced. And maybe you too now. Let them try," Marcus said, stepping into view. The man's eyes narrowed. "You brought someone." "He's the reason you're not in a body bag," Madison replied. "So we're even." The man turned to her. "My name. I think it's Elijah." Madison nodded slowly. "Okay, Elijah. Now let's figure out why people are willing to kill to erase you." From a nearby rooftop, behind a cracked vent, a camera lens pulled back. A silent figure in black observed the trio below and made a call. "They've found each other," the voice said. "Initiate phase 2. Madison didn't sleep that night. The flicker of Elijah's eyes when he said the name Rook kept looping in her mind like a corrupted file. The fear behind his clarity was more telling than the memory itself. He didn't just remember a program, he remembered what it meant to belong to one. Marcus stayed with her, posted near the windows of her apartment, weapon holstered but close. His instincts were sharpened by years of betrayal, and something about the rooftop observer at the shipping yard had set him on edge. "They weren't local," he said, scanning the perimeter for the third time that hour. "The way they moved military but freelance, which means they're not following orders. They're following a contract." "You think Elijah's being hunted by ex-operatives?" Madison asked. "I think Elijah was one, Marcus said. And now someone wants to close that chapter before it writes itself. Madison sat on the edge of her desk, scrolling through encrypted messages on the secure tablet Marcus had provided. The logs from her father's hidden archive were finally decrypting. Within the dense metadata were project folders, each labeled with code names, redacted details, and final statuses. Most were stamped, completed, decommissioned, classified, but one glowed amber, Rook, active, compromised. She tapped into it, fingers trembling. A name surfaced: Elijah Langston, nationality, American. Background: USMC Intelligence, recruited under Hailtech's covert research partnership with DoD Task Force Eclipse. Role: internal sabotage and surveillance agent, placed inside rogue tech firms suspected of developing AI warfare tools. Clearance: Ultra Black. Last known status: missing in operation, presumed dead. She blinked. He was placed inside a company, she murmured. Which company? Marcus leaned over her shoulder. Keep scrolling. At the bottom of the file, one line caught her breath. Embedded target, Nova Praxis. Her voice turned cold. That's Gregory Finch's startup. Marcus froze. The interim chairman? Your board member? After my father died, he lobbied to spin off Hailtech's defense wing into Nova Praxis. Claimed it was too risky to keep under public operations. The board supported him. I didn't. That's why he resented me. He didn't just spin it off, Marcus said grimly. He hid something in it. Something the government planted Elijah to find. Madison's mind clicked. And when Elijah got too close, they pulled him. Or tried to. But he escaped, Marcus said. Lost his memory, but not his instincts. And now Finch is trying to finish what he started. Just then, Madison's phone buzzed. A restricted number, she answered, voice steady. This is Hale. A male voice, low and controlled. You have something that doesn't belong to you. I assume you're not talking about the compass. You're endangering your company, your life. Turn him over, and this ends clean. Who are you? You've already read the file, the voice replied. You know who we are. Then you know I don't take orders. The line went dead. Madison lowered the phone slowly. They're watching us. Marcus locked the doors, dimmed the lights. We need to move him again. Tonight. No, Madison said. That's what they expect. We're not running anymore. We go to them. You want to confront Finch? Marcus asked, incredulous. I want to expose him. She turned the screen toward him, pointing to an entry labeled Phase 2, Internal Override. This protocol allows embedded agents to record encrypted data logs of corporate activity. If Elijah triggered this, then the key to exposing Finch's illegal ops is inside Elijah's memory, or worse, inside whatever he uploaded before he disappeared. And where would that data be stored? Marcus asked. If he was undercover, he wouldn't risk cloud servers. He wouldn't, Madison agreed. He'd store it physically, on site. Marcus narrowed his eyes. Inside Nova Praxis headquarters. Exactly, Madison nodded. And I know how to get in. At 2:17 a.m., Madison drove an unmarked delivery van toward the east perimeter of the Nova Praxis building. She wore a former employee's badge, one of the quiet resignations that had gone unreported, arranged by Marcus weeks ago as a contingency. Elijah sat beside her, hood up, silent. You sure you're ready for this? She asked. No, he admitted, but I think I've done this before. Marcus waited 2 blocks away with an emergency exfiltration kit and scrambler phone. He didn't like it, but he trusted them. Inside, Madison swiped through security. Nothing pinged. Elijah's steps were measured, calculated. He guided them down a service corridor, toward a locked server vault on the lower level. He paused. I remember this hallway, he said, and the man in the corner office. Finch? Number someone else. There were others. The vault required 2-factor biometric access. Madison placed her palm. Elijah hesitated, then slowly pressed his thumb to the secondary scanner. The light turned green. The door opened. Inside, rows of black towers hummed with quiet menace. Elijah went to the far corner, reached behind one of the panels, and removed a steel flash drive embedded in the casing. It was barely larger than a matchstick. This is it, he whispered. The data, the recordings, all of it. As they turned to leave, a red light above the door blinked to life. An alarm. Madison's heart dropped. They're onto us. Move, Elijah barked. They sprinted into the hallway as the building roared awake. Security floodlights, motion detectors, voices echoing from the main floor. Back stairwell. Madison's lungs burned, but Elijah kept pace, guiding her with instincts deeper than memory. Just as they reached the emergency exit, a figure stepped into view, Gregory Finch himself, flanked by 2 armed men. "You should have let him die," he said coldly. "Would have saved us all some trouble." Elijah stepped forward. "You're the reason I can't sleep, the reason I can't remember my own damn name. And you'll wish it stayed that way," Finch said, raising his hand. Madison didn't hesitate. She swung the emergency door release, the blaring sirens covering their escape. Bullets chased them down the alley, but they didn't stop until the van doors slammed shut and Marcus peeled away into the dark. Behind them, Nova Praxis burned with fury. But in Madison's hand was the flash drive, and inside it, justice waiting to be unleashed. The drive back to the safe house was steeped in silence, broken only by the rhythmic hum of tires on asphalt and the distant wail of sirens fading behind them. Madison clutched the flash drive like it held oxygen. Elijah sat beside her, his breathing heavy but measured, his eyes fixed straight ahead, neither victorious nor shaken, but somehow both. Marcus drove with one hand, the other resting near the weapon in his jacket. He didn't speak until they were halfway across the Williamsburg Bridge. "That building was rigged to trap you," he said. "That alarm wasn't an accident. They wanted you to steal that drive." Madison's head turned sharply. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying if Finch knew we were coming, then he let us in. And if he let us in, it means whatever's on that drive might be poisoned. Misinformation, or worse, trackable." Elijah reached into his coat and pulled out a metal-lined pouch. "It's shielded." "I thought of that." He said it like someone who'd once done this for a living. Marcus raised a brow. "Well, damn. Guess your instincts really are coming back." "Not fast enough," Elijah muttered. "Finch was there. He looked at me like I was unfinished business." "You are," Madison said. "To him, you're proof he never buried Rook deep enough." They arrived at an abandoned post office turned temporary command center. Madison and Marcus had outfitted it with Faraday shielding, analog backup systems, and enough power redundancy to survive a grid failure. Here, the drive would be safe. Here, they would unlock the truth. Madison placed the flash drive into the air-gap terminal. The screen blinked to life, displaying a menu coded in a syntax only a few in the world would recognize Hailtech's early quantum framework. Her father's work. Elijah stepped closer. "This language, I remember writing this." Madison glanced at him. "You were embedded as a tech architect. That was your cover. But it wasn't just a front. You really did build the infrastructure." He nodded, jaw tight. "Which means I might have built the kill switch, too." The files began to unpack. Encrypted memos, internal emails, schematic images of AI chips modified for autonomous targeting illegal under international law. But the most damning was a series of video logs. One showed Finch, younger, sitting across from a man with blurred facial features. "The program can't remain buried," Finch was saying. "We either repurpose it or erase it. That includes the asset." Another video played, surveillance footage, Elijah clean-cut, in a suit speaking with a Hailtech engineer. They were discussing protocol violations, unregistered AI nodes, and ghost networks built into civilian infrastructures. The implications were massive. Madison's pulse quickened. "This is it. This is what we needed. We can't just release it," Marcus warned. "They'll spin it, deny it, bury it under national security claims." "Then we release it with context," Madison said. "My name, my voice. I'll stand behind it." Elijah shook his head. "If you do that, you put a target on your head bigger than mine." "I already had one," she said calmly. "Now I just know why." Before they could strategize further, the lights flickered, then died. A low hum filled the space, the sound of a signal jammer. Marcus was already moving. "Secure the drive," he barked. "We've been found." Madison pulled the flash drive and tucked it back into the pouch. Elijah scanned the perimeter. "Back exit?" "Caged," Marcus said. "We'll have to go through the tunnels." "There's a tunnel?" Madison asked. "Every government building built before 1950 has one," Marcus replied. "They were meant for mail carts, but they'll carry people in a pinch." They descended into the basement, flashlights sweeping the old stone walls and rusted conveyor systems. Elijah moved ahead, his body responding before his mind caught up. Muscle memory, a soldier's grace. "They're close," he whispered. "I can feel it." "Then we don't stop," Madison said. But they did. At the mouth of the tunnel, a figure stepped into view. Not Finch, worse. It was Weller, the man who had once overseen Elijah's training within the Rook program. Eyes like broken glass. Smile carved from cold steel. "Always knew you'd come back," Weller said. "You don't abandon family." Elijah's jaw clenched. "You're no family of mine. You were built by us, fed by us, programmed to survive only under our leash. You think you can break that because of a woman with Daddy's legacy?" Madison stepped forward, fury burning behind her composure. "You corrupted everything Hailtech stood for. You turned defense into domestic warfare." "Defense is warfare," Weller snapped. "You want peace? Buy a plot of land and a fence. You want control? You build it with fear." Elijah didn't wait. He lunged. Weller anticipated it, ducking and drawing a blade in one motion. The two collided in the tight corridor, fists and steel echoing off stone. Madison raised her gun but couldn't get a clean shot. Marcus pulled her back. "He has to finish this," he said. Blood sprayed across the wall. Elijah dropped to one knee, a gash across his side. Weller stepped forward, victorious. Still soft. "I warned them you weren't ready to come back." But Elijah smiled. "I didn't." Then, with sudden force, he jammed a broken pipe into the panel behind Weller, triggering an old mail chute. A surge of steam and rusted metal exploded upward, knocking Weller back and out cold. Elijah staggered, breathing hard. "Let's go," he said. "Before round 2 shows up." They emerged blocks away, gasping in the fresh air. Marcus hailed a contact for safe transit. Madison clutched the flash drive again. "We're not just surviving this," she said. "We're ending it." Elijah looked at her, a quiet fire in his eyes. "Then we do it together." They moved to a safe house even Marcus had never used before, an old farmhouse nestled deep in the Catskills, disconnected from any grid, its walls thick with history and silence. Madison stood by the window, watching the morning fog roll through the trees like whispers trying to find their way. The flash drive rested on the kitchen table beside a steaming cup of black coffee and a stack of printed transcripts. Elijah sat across from her, his side freshly stitched and wrapped in gauze. He hadn't said much since the fight. Madison broke the silence. "You hesitated before you hit that panel. Why?" Elijah looked at her, his eyes more focused now than they'd ever been. "Because for a second, I remembered him, Weller, teaching me how to move silently, how to disappear, how to dismantle a target's identity before they even knew they had one. You remembered him as a mentor. I remembered him as the man who turned me into a ghost," Elijah said. Madison exhaled. "You're not a ghost anymore." Marcus came in with a satellite phone pressed to his ear. "We have a narrow window. My source inside the Department of Defense just confirmed Nova Praxis is preparing a public announcement. Finch is about to spin the narrative, probably claim a data breach by a foreign actor, frame it as an act of cyber terrorism. Once it's out, they'll bury the truth under patriotism and fear." Madison nodded. "Then we release first. Not just the drive," Marcus added. "We do it live, press conference, broadcast. You, Madison, standing there with Elijah beside you. If they want to call it treason, they'll have to do it with your face on every screen." Elijah stood. "That's suicide. That's exposure," Madison corrected. "They can't silence what the whole country sees." Marcus placed a folder on the table. Inside were documents, floor plans, a speech draft, and one final card. An invitation to the annual Hale Foundation Gala, set for the coming weekend. Finch would be there. The entire board would be there. Donors, journalists, live media coverage. "We hijacked their event," Marcus said. "You take the stage. Tell the truth before he does." Elijah looked skeptical. "Security will be heavy. Facial recognition, metal detectors." "We get you in as staff," Marcus replied, "and we keep you off every database. There's one guy who can help with that, Charlie Nunez. He used to ghost people for the CIA. Now he makes retired IDs for whistleblowers." "How do we find him?" Madison asked. "We don't," Marcus said. "He finds you." That night they drove to a closed-down bowling alley outside Newark. Inside, under flickering neon lights and the smell of old wax and popcorn, a bearded man in a denim jacket waved them over. "Which one of you needs to disappear?" he asked. No introductions. "Actually," Madison said, "he needs to reappear. As someone new." Charlie chuckled. "That's harder." He tapped Elijah's face gently. "You got good bone structure, but not memorable. That's an asset. I'll build you as a Gulf War veteran turned private tech consultant. You'll have a military ID, social media footprint, employment history, even a couple of traffic violations. Nothing that raises flags, but enough to pass scrutiny." "And the name?" Elijah asked. "Aaron Blake," Charlie said. "Not flashy, but reliable." Within 36 hours, Elijah was Aaron Blake, a man with a mild limp, an archived Navy Cross, and just enough debt to look real. Charlie handed Madison a sealed envelope. "This gets him into the gala. Catering staff. He'll be in the room when you speak. If things go south, he's the exit." "Appreciate it," Madison said. "Don't thank me yet," Charlie replied. "When the cameras roll, you're poking a lion in the eye. Make sure your story roars louder." They left Newark with heavy silence. The closer they got to the gala, the thinner the line between bravery and recklessness became. But Madison had made her decision. The world deserved the truth about Finch, about the misuse of Hailtech's technology, about Elijah's sacrifice. At the farmhouse, she rehearsed her speech late into the night. Elijah stood nearby, watching her from the shadows. "You believe this will change something?" he asked. "I believe silence keeps things broken," she replied. "If we want justice, we have to tear the curtain down, even if it exposes you." Especially then. The day of the gala arrived. Madison wore her mother's pearl earrings, simple, understated, but meaningful. Elijah wore the navy slacks and white shirt of a server, the forged ID clipped to his belt. Marcus had tapped into the gala's AV system via a remote uplink. When the moment came, their signal would override the scheduled broadcast. Madison's car pulled up to the venue, a glass and steel monument in Midtown, wrapped in red carpet and flanked by men in tuxedos and women in sequined gowns. Cameras flashed. Finch stood near the entryway, shaking hands, smiling like he owned the world. Madison's heels clicked across the marble as she passed him. He turned, recognition flickering in his eyes, but said nothing. Inside, the room glittered with old money and polished lies. The MC introduced Finch, who stepped up to the podium. Madison made her move. She walked directly to the stage stairs. "Excuse me," she said to the assistant. "I'm afraid there's been a change in the program." Before they could stop her, Marcus triggered the AV override. Every screen in the building and across the media stream cut to her face. She stepped up to the podium, lifted the microphone, and looked straight into the crowd. "My name is Madison Hale," she began, "and this company was built on my father's dream to protect, not to manipulate, not to dominate, and never to kill. But that dream has been corrupted." In the back, Elijah watched from the corner of the room. Finch stood frozen near the side doors, jaw clenched. Madison continued, her voice unwavering. "I have in my possession undeniable evidence of a covert program approved by members of this board that weaponized artificial intelligence in direct violation of federal law and human decency. One of their embedded operatives is here tonight. His name is Elijah Langston. They tried to erase him. They failed." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Security began moving. Finch stepped forward. "Turn it off," he barked. "Cut the feed." But it was too late. The truth had been spoken. The data, already uploaded, now cascaded through public servers like wildfire. And somewhere inside Elijah, the ghost of who he once was finally stood tall. Finch's voice echoed through the ballroom like the clang of a falling gavel. "Shut it down now!" But no one moved. His command landed limp against the rising tide of whispers, phones raised, camera lights blinking like fireflies in a storm. Madison remained steady behind the podium, her hands gripping the edges, as if anchoring herself against the very weight of history. Her voice, calm and unwavering, rose once more. "The files have already been released to multiple independent servers and journalistic institutions. Even if you silence me now, the truth is out." Elijah, still dressed in catering whites, stood motionless near the rear wall, scanning for movement guards, exits, eyes that lingered too long. He had already spotted 2 Nova Praxis operatives blending in with security, their comms discreetly hidden behind their ears. He recognized their stance, their quiet calculation. They were waiting for a signal. Finch stepped forward, rage distorting his features. She's lying. This is a personal vendetta, a smear campaign. She's using her father's name to expose what you've done in his name, Madison cut in. You used my father's innovations to build weapons of domestic surveillance. You buried whistleblowers. You erased Elijah Langston. The crowd gasped. The name hung heavy in the room like the first drop of thunder before a storm. Finch froze, momentarily stunned. Then, for the briefest second, his eyes flicked toward the back of the room toward Elijah. It was enough. Elijah stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. I'm right here. Murmurs turned into a swell of voices. Phones pivoted toward him, clicks and flashes punctuating the moment. Elijah moved slowly, deliberately, through the crowd. People parted for him as if guided by instinct or perhaps fear. He walked to the front, stood beside Madison, and spoke into the mic. My name is Elijah Langston. I served under Project Rook, a covert division of Nova Praxis. My directive was to design systems that could neutralize threats before they occurred. Minority Report, without the courtesy of fiction. I believed it was to protect, but I was wrong. We weren't building shields. We were building cages. Finch tried to laugh, but it came out dry and bitter. This man is a traitor, a rogue agent with falsified records. Then why did you try to kill him 3 times this week? Madison challenged. Why did your men chase him through Newark, ambush us at the safe house, and send Weller to finish the job? Finch's eyes darted to the exits. Elijah's hand drifted near his hip, not for a weapon, but to activate a small signal in his pocket. Marcus's voice cracked through Finch's earpiece before the man could even move. Don't. 1 step, and you're the first headline tomorrow morning. Across the city, multiple encrypted packages had detonated across verified news outlets. Internal memos, surveillance logs, audio recordings of Finch authorizing gray ops. One by one, screens in the ballroom began to light up with live coverage. Outside the venue, a wall of media had assembled. Protesters were beginning to gather. NYPD cruisers formed a perimeter. The night had turned. Elijah leaned into the microphone one last time. Justice doesn't always wear a badge or a robe. Sometimes it looks like the face they tried to erase. Madison touched his shoulder, then faced the audience. We're not here for revenge. We're here for reckoning. If we're to move forward as a nation, we have to clean the blood from beneath our foundations. Finch, cornered and still calculating, made his move. He reached into his blazer, not for a gun but for a device, a fail-safe, a pulse emitter, one that would erase the drive data remotely. Elijah saw it first. Without thinking, he lunged not toward Finch, but toward the AV console. He ripped the Ethernet connection free, a split second before the signal could propagate. Screens froze, data preserved. But Elijah didn't stop. He turned back to Finch, reached him in 3 long strides, and pinned him against the podium. No more shadows, Elijah said through clenched teeth. No more lies. Security flooded the room, but not to protect Finch. Not anymore. NYPD officers entered from the side doors with federal agents behind them. The DOJ had been watching the upload live. The data had done its job. One agent, stern and measured, approached the stage. Richard Finch, you are under arrest for conspiracy, unlawful surveillance, obstruction of justice, and the attempted murder of a federal witness. Please step down. Finch didn't resist. His arrogance had collapsed under the weight of exposure. As he was led away, handcuffs glinting under the chandeliers, the room erupted not in applause, but in stunned silence. As if bearing witness to something that wasn't supposed to happen. As if justice, long dormant, had briefly opened one eye. Elijah stepped back from the podium, his breathing sharp but steady. Madison turned to him, voice low. You okay? He nodded. Not clean, but clear. Cameras were still rolling. Reporters clamored for statements. But Madison and Elijah walked out the side door, disappearing into the cold night, into the kind of freedom that didn't come from innocence but from truth revealed. They didn't speak much on the drive back. There was still more to do. Investigations would follow, reputations would burn. But the silence between them was no longer burdened by shame or fear. It was the quiet after a storm. The breath you take when you finally come up for air. 3 days after the gala, The world had not quieted, it had erupted. Morning talk shows led with Madison's face, her words dissected frame by frame across news cycles. Elijah's identity, once scrubbed from every database, was now a trending name, both lionized and questioned. Finch's arrest triggered congressional hearings, investor withdrawals, and a wave of civil suits against Hailtech and its subsidiaries. Yet amid the whirlwind, the farmhouse remained still. Madison sat on the porch, wrapped in a worn army blanket Elijah had found in the attic. Her phone buzzed every few seconds, calls from attorneys, senators, even a White House liaison. She ignored most of them. Marcus appeared in the doorway holding a mug of coffee. "You should take one or two of those. Some of them are offering real support, public protection, whistleblower immunity." "Not yet," she said. "It's too early to trust that what they offer isn't just damage control." Elijah walked out behind Marcus, arms crossed, watching the tree line. "They'll keep digging. The files are only part of the truth. The rest lives in testimony." "Then we'll give them that," Madison replied, "in pieces, on our terms." Marcus sipped his coffee. "We may not get to dictate the terms for long. There are senators demanding your appearance in front of the Judiciary Committee." "Good," she said. "Let the record show we didn't run." That night, the three of them drove into D.C., Elijah riding in the back seat with a hoodie pulled low. They stayed in a safe house owned by a journalist Madison had once mentored during a summer internship. She had offered the basement quiet, dark, and off-grid. A bunker, really. The next morning they arrived at the Senate hearing room. It was less grand than expected, but heavier somehow. The kind of place that bore witness to historical unravelings. Madison wore a navy blue suit, her hair tied back, no makeup but a gloss of calm determination. Elijah, dressed plainly, kept his head low until called. The room filled with murmurs when his name was spoken. The senators asked the expected questions. Did you willingly participate in Project Rook? Did you attempt to leak classified documents? Were you ever coerced by foreign agents? Madison watched Elijah answer each question with quiet precision. No, I did not leak for personal gain. No, I was not coerced. I disclosed the project because it violated not just the Constitution, but basic human decency. We were building mechanisms to profile, track, and neutralize individuals before they ever committed a crime based on flawed logic and unchecked algorithms. The room stilled. Even the most skeptical senators leaned in. One, a woman from Oregon, asked, "Why now? Why risk your life, your future, your anonymity?" Elijah didn't hesitate. Because silence is a type of violence, and because Madison Hale believed the truth was worth more than her reputation. Gasps echoed softly. Cameras zoomed in. Madison's jaw tensed, but she didn't look away. Then it was her turn. She was sworn in, seated, and questioned. Most questions were civil, a few hostile. One senator from Texas accused her of undermining national security. "My father believed in protecting people," Madison answered. "What Finch and his board did was hijack that belief to sell fear to the highest bidder." "Do you have any regrets?" asked another. She paused. "Only that I didn't act sooner." When the hearings adjourned, the air outside the Capitol felt heavier. They walked together down the marble steps, a wall of reporters waiting, their microphones extended like spears. Madison raised a hand, signaling silence, then spoke clearly. "This is not the end. This is the start of a conversation we've avoided for too long. About technology, about accountability, about the line between protection and control. We hope the people who watch tonight remember that institutions only change when the people inside them do." That night, they returned to the farmhouse. It had become more than shelter. It had become sacred ground, the place where they shed fear, where they told the truth, where they started again. Madison stood in the kitchen, pouring wine into mismatched mugs. "To Marcus," she said, lifting her glass, "for staying when it got hard. To Elijah," Marcus added, raising his own, "for reminding us ghosts can bleed and still stand." Elijah smiled faintly. "To Madison," he said at last, "for putting her name where her father's dream used to be." They drank, quietly. There was no celebration, just release. Later, when the others slept, Madison walked out into the night. The stars above were cold and bright. She looked up, remembering the night she'd first seen the flash drive, the night everything had changed. And in that silence, she whispered a promise. This time, we finish it. Behind her, the wind rustled the trees. Not an ending, but something beginning. The morning air was colder than usual, sharp with early frost, as Madison stood by the window watching a black SUV pull into the gravel driveway. She didn't need to ask who it was Marcus had called 20 minutes earlier. "They're sending someone from the bureau," he'd said. "Not to arrest. Not yet. They want cooperation." Elijah stood behind her, quiet, hands in his pockets. "You think this is real?" She shook her head. "I think it's convenient. And they never offer peace unless war is more expensive." The doorbell rang. Marcus answered it. A woman in her early 50s entered, wearing a gray wool coat over a navy suit, her badge discreet but visible. "Special Agent Renee Holloway," she said, offering a firm handshake. "We need to talk." In the living room, with a fire crackling low in the hearth, Agent Holloway laid out the deal. The DOJ was building a full-scale investigation into Hailtech's contracts, particularly those tied to domestic surveillance, AI weaponry, and illegal data acquisition. Finch's testimony wasn't enough. They needed corroboration from both Elijah and internal corporate sources. "We know what you released to the press," she said, looking at Madison. "But we also know you're holding back. You have more. Names, threads, possibly enough to implicate defense subcontractors." Madison didn't flinch, and in return, Holloway leaned forward. "We secure immunity for Elijah. Witness protection, if needed. Full whistleblower status. We drop any remaining inquiries into your corporate role provided you testify before a federal grand jury and turn over the full data chain." Elijah met Madison's eyes. This was the choice, the irreversible one. They nodded almost imperceptibly. Holloway slid over a tablet. "We'll set a meeting, sealed room, no press, just truth." That night, Madison sat alone in her father's study, surrounded by blueprints, awards, and photographs of a man whose ideals had been contorted into a weapon. She unlocked her laptop, entered the final sequence of passwords, and stared at the folders marked Tier 7, Unreleased. These were the ones she'd never shared. Documents detailing experimental behavior prediction algorithms, targeting criteria based on socioeconomic profiling, and psychological manipulation tools used on U.S. soil. She opened one file and froze. The program was named after her Project MH, not her doing. A tribute from Finch, no doubt, twisted in irony. Elijah entered quietly behind her. "You're sure?" She turned. "If we leave these out, the system survives. Maybe with new names, new funding. But the rot remains." He stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. Then we cut to the root. The next week passed in a blur of legal briefs, security clearances, and constant surveillance. Their phones were swapped, locations masked. Marcus operated like a shadow, vetting every route and escort. Finally, the day came. A federal courtroom private, sealed, without gallery. Madison sat at the center, facing a semicircle of government officials, attorneys, and a federal judge. Her voice, once tremulous, now held steel. "I was born into this company, but I refuse to let it die as a machine of silence. What we discovered, what Finch built using my father's legacy, it is not patriotism, it is not security, it is sanctioned paranoia disguised as progress." She submitted her files, every one. She answered questions for 4 hours. Not once did she falter. When Elijah took the stand, the room changed. His testimony was not technical, it was human. "We flagged people based on keyword patterns, racial linguistics, even neighborhood heat maps. We didn't ask who they were, we just built systems that assumed guilt. And those systems were fed into drones, into predictive incarceration models, into police databases." A young prosecutor asked softly, "And you executed these programs?" Elijah stared ahead. "I built them. I didn't understand, not then, but I do now, which is why I'm standing here, not running." By the end of the hearing, there were no questions left, only silence. As they stepped outside, the sky opened with light snowfall, gentle, unseasonal. Madison looked up and exhaled. "There, it's done." Elijah tilted his head. Not done, but started, for real this time. That evening, they returned not to the farmhouse, but to a quiet apartment in Alexandria provided by the DOJ. Temporary quarters, neutral ground. Madison moved slowly, tired from the weight of release. Elijah poured 2 glasses of water and handed her one. "We should sleep," he said. "Tomorrow the world reacts." She nodded, but paused before drinking. "Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if none of this happened?" Elijah thought for a long moment. "I'd still be in the dark, comfortable, useful, invisible." He looked at her, voice low. "Now I see." She smiled faintly. "Then maybe all this was worth it." He didn't answer, but the quiet between them said enough. Outside, the snow continued, covering the old tracks, the buried things, the griefs they had dared to speak aloud. And somewhere, in boardrooms and basements across the country, others began to ask, "What else have we accepted without question? What more must be revealed?" 1 month later, the world had changed, but not in the ways they expected. Hailtech's assets were frozen, its board dismantled under a swarm of indictments. The DOJ opened an unprecedented investigation into predictive AI misuse, and whistleblower laws were amended to include algorithmic ethics. Madison became an unofficial figurehead, not a politician, not an activist, but something else entirely, a symbol. Her face was projected on murals in university courtyards, quoted in legal briefs, whispered about in the halls of Silicon Valley and Capitol Hill alike. But none of that changed what she saw when she looked in the mirror each morning, the residue of betrayal, the weight of having known and waited too long to act. She stood now in front of a crowd at Georgetown University. Hundreds of students, faculty, and press filled the historic auditorium, the same room where her father had once delivered a keynote on innovation and morality. Today, the plaque with his name had been quietly removed. Madison adjusted the mic. "I'm not here to talk about redemption," she began. "This isn't a confession or a call to arms. I'm here because silence let this happen, because power loves silence, and because sometimes the only way to honor the past is to dismantle the systems it trusted." She paused, letting the quiet settle. "We didn't expose a conspiracy. We exposed a culture of convenience, of profit over people, of mistaking efficiency for justice." Elijah watched from the side aisle, flanked by Marcus and Agent Holloway, now permanently assigned to the Federal Task Force on AI Integrity. She continued, voice steady, "There is no algorithm that can weigh the value of a human life. No machine that can absolve us from the responsibility of knowing, choosing, and remembering. If we forget that, we become the machine." The room stood in ovation. Cameras flashed. But Madison's eyes found Elijah's, and in that moment, they both knew this wasn't the end. It was just another threshold. Later, back at the farmhouse now, theirs by deed, transferred quietly after Hailtech's collapse, they sat in the barn-turned-library Elijah had restored. Old farm tools hung beside shelves of books on ethics, code, law, and justice. "You know," Elijah said, "we could disappear. Start over, new names, a quiet life." Madison shook her head, smiling. "We tried that, and even in hiding, the world found us. Maybe it always will, but now, we don't run." He nodded, lifting a small wooden box from the shelf. Inside were remnants of their journey, the original flash drive, a photograph of Finch at her father's funeral, and the first internal memo she'd ever written, the one that had been ignored. "Keep it?" he asked. "No," she replied. "Let's donate it to the National Archives. Let someone else decide what it means." Outside, spring was starting to breach the frost line. Buds pushed up through thawing earth, a new season, insistently blooming. That night, Madison wrote a letter, not for publication, just for herself. She began with a single sentence. "My name is Madison Hale, and I stopped believing in legacy the day I decided to build something better." When she finished, she folded the paper, slid it into the back of her father's first engineering notebook, and shelved it between the Federalist Papers and Silent Spring. As the clock ticked toward midnight, Elijah joined her at the window. In the distance, the old tree line moved like a wave under wind. "You ever think they'll forget?" he asked. She didn't look away from the darkness. "Some will. That's why we build things that last longer than memory." In Washington, hearings continued. In California, new legislation passed to regulate corporate AI development. In Detroit, a boy wrongly flagged by an old Hailtech program was released from juvenile detention, his record wiped clean. And in dozens of anonymous chat rooms, young coders debated the ethics of machine learning not as a problem to solve, but as a responsibility to carry. Madison's name no longer appeared in tabloids, but it lived in syllabi, in case law, in the whispers of engineers who decided to pause before launching their next idea. Her final act wasn't loud, it wasn't broadcast or shared. It was a choice to stay, to work within the cracks, to be the quiet force behind better things. As dawn broke over the barn, a soft, golden light poured across the desk where she now sat, drafting a proposal for a nonprofit focused on algorithmic accountability. Its name would be simple: Hail. Not a monument, not a brand, just a reminder of what's broken, of what can be rebuilt, of what it means to choose justice over silence. The story of Madison Hale and Elijah teaches us that true justice often begins with the courage to break silence. It reminds us that even the most powerful systems can be dismantled when individuals choose integrity over comfort, truth over legacy. In a world increasingly driven by algorithms and profit, the story urges us to remain human, to question, to protect, and to speak out when others won't. It's a call to responsibility, that silence is not neutrality, and inaction can be complicity. Real change doesn't come from grand gestures, but from the quiet, persistent choice to do what's right, especially when it costs us everything.